You are listening to HOA Karma Files. She used a clipboard like a warrant. Colleen Harper screamed that she would make this a lean conversation if I kept denying it. Your file says repeat offender, she said, jabbing her finger at a manila folder she had pulled from under her arm. The folder had a printed timeline inside, tabs sticking out like she had built a prosecution case. We were standing in the mailbox cluster area of Magnolia Terrace Community Association in Seattle, Washington, and I had no idea what she was talking about. I am a systems analyst. I do not steal mail. But Colleen Harper, our compliance chair, had apparently decided I was a criminal, and she was not asking questions. She was handing down a sentence. She said I had been hanging around the mailbox cluster when mailers went missing. She said residents had complained. She said the rules changed yesterday, and I should have known. I asked what rules. She told me it did not matter because my pattern of behavior was already documented. She jingled a key ring with too many keys, like the sound itself was supposed to be authority. I could see at least a dozen keys on that ring, way more than any single board member should have. She told me she was filing a report with my employer and that I should expect consequences. I said I had not touched anyone's mail. She said, I have witnesses. That was her thing. She said it twice in the first minute. I have witnesses. Like saying it made it true. Then she said something that would come back to bite her later. She leaned in close and said, your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. I did not have a camera on me right then, but I made a mental note of that line. It felt like she was trying to get ahead of something. She told me I had 24 hours to submit a written response to the board, or she would proceed with a formal violation and a $500 fine. She said if I ignored her, she would escalate to a lien. A lien on my townhouse. Because someone said I was hanging around mailboxes. I asked for a copy of the complaint. She said it was confidential. I asked who the witnesses were. She said that was confidential too. Then she walked away, keys jingling, folder tucked under her arm like she had just served me a lawsuit. I stood there for a second, trying to process what had just happened. The mailbox cluster was a normal row of metal boxes, built into a brick kiosk near the entrance of our townhouse row. Everyone in Magnolia Terrace walked past it daily. I checked my mail there. That was it. I did not loiter. I did not steal. But Colleen had a file on me apparently, and she was moving fast. I went back to my unit and started looking through my own records. I keep a pretty detailed calendar because my medical schedule depends on my car and time. I have a chronic condition that requires regular specialist visits in Seattle, and if I miss an appointment, it takes weeks to reschedule. My car is not optional. If Colleen tried to tow me or block my access, that was a real problem. I pulled up my calendar and checked the last 2 weeks. I had been at work during most of the mailbox incidents she was probably talking about. I had timestamps, badge swipes, meeting invites. But I did not know what specific days she was claiming, because she would not tell me. That night, I got a text from my neighbor Marcus. He lived 3 units down, and we talked sometimes when we were both taking out trash. He said Colleen had been going door to door that evening, telling people I was banned from the pool gate for theft. The pool gate. I had not even been to the pool in a month. Marcus said she cornered him at his front door and told him to avoid me because I was under investigation. He said she had a stack of orange warning tags in her hand, and she kept jingling those keys. He thought it was weird. He asked what I had done. I told him I had no idea, but I was going to figure it out. The next morning, I got an email from the Magnolia Terrace Management Company. The subject line said Access Suspension Notice. The body of the email said my resident portal login had been disabled pending resolution of a compliance matter. The email said I could not reserve amenities, submit maintenance requests, or view association documents until further notice. It said I should contact Colleen Harper directly. I called the management office. The receptionist said Colleen had requested the suspension and that they were required to comply with board member requests. I asked if they had verified the complaint. She said that was not their role. I asked how I was supposed to resolve a compliance matter if I could not even see the rules. She said I should contact Colleen. I called Colleen. She did not answer. I left a voicemail asking for a copy of the complaint and the specific rule I had violated. She called back an hour later. She did not address my questions. She said the next board meeting was in 3 weeks and that I could submit a written statement for the record. I said 3 weeks was too long. She said that was the process. I said I needed access to my portal and my amenities. She said that was under review. Then she said, "I have witnesses," again, and hung up. I realized she was stalling. She wanted me locked out and scrambling. I did not know why yet, but I knew it was intentional. I started looking at my own doorbell camera footage. I have a Ring camera on my front door. It faces my porch and part of the walkway. I went back 2 weeks and started scrubbing through the footage. I found something on the second day. A delivery driver dropped off a package at 11 in the morning. I was at work. The package sat there for 6 minutes. Then Colleen walked up, looked around, picked up the package, and walked away. She did not knock. She did not leave a note. She just took it. I checked the metadata on the video file. It was timestamped and geotagged. I downloaded it and saved 3 copies. One on my phone, one on a USB drive, and one in cloud storage. Then I kept scrubbing. I found 2 more incidents. One where Colleen took a small box from my neighbor's porch. One where she was standing near the mailbox cluster with a shopping bag, pulling opened mailers out of a mailbox and putting them in the bag. The mailbox door was open. She had a key. That key ring made sense now. She had master keys for the mailbox cluster. She was opening other people's boxes and taking their mail. I had her. But I did not know what to do with it yet. If I confronted her directly, she would lie. If I sent it to the board, she controlled the board communications. The HOA operated by manipulating minutes and agendas to erase objections. I had seen it before. Residents would raise concerns in meetings, and those concerns would not show up in the official minutes. Colleen was the one who typed the minutes. She controlled the record. If she said something did not happen, it did not happen, according to the HOA. I needed a third party. I needed someone who was not part of the HOA and who had a reason to care. I thought about the delivery driver. Then I thought about the management company. Then I thought about the vendors. Magnolia Terrace had contracts with a tow company, a landscaping company, and a maintenance vendor. If Colleen was stealing packages, she was probably blaming vendors when residents complained. I decided to start there. I called the tow company first. I introduced myself and said I was a resident at Magnolia Terrace. I asked if they had received any complaints recently about unauthorized tows or access issues. The dispatcher said they did not discuss client matters. I said I understood, but that I was being threatened with a tow and I wanted to know if it was legitimate. She put me on hold. A manager came on the line. His name was Derek. He sounded tired. He said Colleen Harper had called them 4 times in the past 2 weeks, claiming that residents were violating parking rules. He said she had tried to authorize 3 tows without board approval. He said they had pushed back and asked for written authorization each time. He said Colleen had gotten angry and threatened to switch vendors. He said he was sick of being blamed for things that were not his fault. I asked if he would be willing to confirm that in writing. He said he would think about it. That gave me an idea. If Derek was willing to talk, maybe other vendors were too. I called the landscaping company. Same story. Colleen had been calling them, claiming that residents were violating landscaping rules, asking them to document violations. The crew supervisor said Colleen had asked them to take photos of specific units and send them to her. He said it felt like surveillance. He said they had stopped doing it because it was not in their contract. I asked if he would confirm that. He said maybe. I was building a case, but I still did not have a plan for how to use it. Then Colleen made a mistake. She escalated in public. The next afternoon, I was walking to my car. I was heading to a medical appointment. I had my keys in my hand. Colleen came out of nowhere, moving fast, waving her stack of orange warning tags. She said I was not allowed to use my car until the compliance matter was resolved. I said that was not enforceable. She said she had authorization. I said from who? She said the board. I said show me the authorization. She said it was verbal. I said that was not how it works. She raised her voice. She said, "I have witnesses." A neighbor walking by stopped. Another neighbor came out of a unit. Colleen pointed at me and said I had been stealing from cars and that I was under investigation. She said it loud enough that 4 people heard her. I stayed calm. I said I had done nothing wrong and that I had evidence. She said evidence did not matter because her minutes were the truth. That line again. I said I was recording this conversation. I pulled out my phone and held it up. She stepped back. Then she said I was not allowed to record her without consent. I said this was a public space and Washington is a 2-party consent state for private conversations. But this was not private because she was yelling in a parking lot in front of witnesses. She told me to stop recording. I did not. She walked away, still waving those orange tags. One of the neighbors who had stopped asked me what was going on. I gave him the short version. I said Colleen had accused me of stealing mail and packages, that I had not done it, and that I had camera footage proving she was the one stealing. He looked surprised. He said he had been missing packages too. He said Colleen had told him it was the delivery drivers. I said it was not the drivers. I said I would send him the footage if he wanted to see it. He said yes. That night, I sent the doorbell footage to 3 neighbors who had mentioned missing packages in the neighborhood chat. Within an hour, 2 of them confirmed they had similar footage. One had a camera that showed Colleen walking away from his porch with a box. Another had footage of Colleen opening a mailbox with a key and taking something out. We started comparing notes. It turned out Colleen had been doing this for months. She would take small packages, open mail, and sometimes just move things to create confusion. When residents complained, she would blame the vendors, the delivery drivers, or random passers-by. She had been running interference the whole time. But we still had a problem. The HOA board did not meet for another 2.5 weeks. Colleen controlled the meeting agendas. Even if we showed up with evidence, she could table the discussion or claim it was not relevant to the agenda. We needed to force a confrontation outside the normal board process. We needed to catch her in the act, or corner her somewhere she could not control the narrative. Then, the next delivery arrived. I had ordered a replacement item for the package Colleen had stolen. The tracking said it would arrive the next day between 10 and 2. I was supposed to be at work, but I called in and said I had a personal emergency. I set up my phone on a tripod inside my front window, pointed at the porch. I turned on the doorbell camera. I sat inside and waited. At 11:30, the delivery driver dropped off the package. I watched from the window. 6 minutes later, Colleen walked up the path. She looked around. She bent down and picked up the package. I opened the front door. I said, "That is my package." She froze. She looked at me. She looked at the package. Then she said, "I was bringing it inside for you." I said, "You do not have a key to my unit." She said, "I was going to leave it at the office." I said, "The office is in the opposite direction." She said, "You are being hostile." I said, "You are stealing my package." She said, "I have witnesses." I said, "I have a camera." I pointed at the doorbell. She looked at it. Her face changed. She put the package down on the porch and walked away fast, keys jingling. I picked up the package and went back inside. I downloaded the footage immediately. I now had her on camera stealing a package while I was home. That was bold. That was stupid. I sent the footage to the 3 neighbors I had been talking to. One of them said we should go to the police. I agreed. But I wanted to do one more thing first. I wanted to confront her in front of the management company. The Magnolia Terrace management office was in a small commercial building about 2 miles away. They handled multiple HOA properties in the Seattle area. I called and made an appointment to speak with the property manager. Her name was Linda. I did not tell her what it was about. I just said I needed to discuss a compliance issue. The appointment was set for the next afternoon at 2. I showed up early. I brought my laptop, a USB drive with all the footage, and a printed timeline showing the dates and times of each theft. The timeline matched the one Colleen had showed me, except mine had video evidence attached. I sat in the lobby and waited. At 2, Linda came out and brought me back to a small conference room. She asked what I needed to discuss. I said I was being accused of stealing mail and packages, that the accusation was false, and that I had evidence showing the compliance chair was the one committing the thefts. She looked skeptical. I opened my laptop and played the first video, then the second, then the third, then the one from yesterday. Her expression changed. She said, "This is serious." I said, "Yes." She said, "Have you reported this to the board?" I said, "The compliance chair is the one stealing. She is on the board." She said, "Have you reported it to the police?" I said, "Not yet. I wanted to give the HOA a chance to handle it first." She said, "I need to escalate this to our regional manager." I said, "Please do." She said, "In the meantime, I am restoring your portal access and removing the suspension." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Do you want me to call Miss Harper and ask her to come in?" I said, "Yes." Linda called Colleen from the conference room phone. She put it on speaker. Colleen answered. Linda said, "Hi, Colleen. This is Linda from Magnolia Terrace Management. I have a resident here with some concerns about a compliance matter. Can you come to the office?" Colleen said, "What resident?" Linda said, "I would rather discuss it in person." Colleen said, "I am very busy." Linda said, "This is urgent." Colleen paused. Then she said, "Fine, I will be there in 20 minutes. She hung up. If you are enjoying this, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about HOA nightmares and the people who fight back. Linda and I waited. I asked if I could stay in the room. She said yes. She said she wanted me there when Colleen arrived. I set up my laptop again so the footage was ready to play. At 2:25, the lobby door opened. I heard Colleen's voice. She was talking to the receptionist. She sounded annoyed. Linda went out and brought her back. Colleen walked into the conference room and saw me. Her face went tight. She said, "What is this?" Linda said, "Please sit down." Colleen said, "I do not have time for ambushes." Linda said, "This is not an ambush. This is a fact-finding meeting." Colleen sat down. She put her stack of orange warning tags on the table. She put her key ring next to them. She folded her arms. Linda said, "We have received allegations that you have been taking packages and mail from residents." Colleen said, "That is absurd." Linda said, "We have video evidence." Colleen said, "Video can be edited." Linda turned the laptop toward her and played the first clip. Colleen watched. Her jaw tightened. Linda played the second clip. Colleen said, "That is taken out of context." Linda played the third clip. Colleen said, "I was securing those items for the residents." Linda played the clip from yesterday. Colleen said nothing. Linda said, "Can you explain why you picked up this resident's package and walked away without knocking or leaving a note?" Colleen said, "I was bringing it to the office." Linda said, "The office is in the opposite direction." Colleen said, "I changed my mind." Linda said, "We also have reports from vendors that you have been pressuring them to document residents without board authorization." Colleen said, "That is part of my role as compliance chair." Linda said, "Not according to your governing documents." Linda pulled out a printed copy of the HOA bylaws. She flipped to a highlighted section. She said, "The compliance chair is authorized to investigate violations and report findings to the board. The compliance chair is not authorized to take enforcement action unilaterally and is not authorized to access resident units or personal property without written consent." Colleen said, "I have keys." Linda said, "Those are emergency access keys. They are not for compliance inspections." Colleen said, "You are twisting the rules." Linda said, "I am reading the rules." Colleen turned to me. She said, "You set this up." I said, "You stole my packages." She said, "Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth." Linda said, "Excuse me?" Colleen said it again. "Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth." Linda said, "Minutes are a record of meetings. They are not evidence in a theft investigation." Colleen said, "I have witnesses." Linda said, "Who?" Colleen did not answer. Linda said, "If you have witnesses to any of these alleged violations, I need their names and statements." Colleen said, "That is confidential." Linda said, "No, it is not. Not in a disciplinary matter involving board conduct." Colleen stood up. She said, "I do not have to sit here and be interrogated." Linda said, "You are not being interrogated. You are being asked to respond to evidence." Colleen said, "This is a witch hunt." She grabbed her orange tags and her keyring. She said, "I am reporting this to the board president." Linda said, "I am the one who will be reporting this to the board president, and to our legal counsel, and possibly to the police." Colleen said, "You cannot do that." Linda said, "I absolutely can. This is theft. This is fraud. This is abuse of authority." Colleen walked out. The lobby door slammed. Linda looked at me. She said, "I am sorry you had to deal with that." I said, "It is fine." She said, "I am going to send this footage and your timeline to our regional manager today. I am also going to recommend that the board suspend Miss Harper pending an investigation." I said, "What about the threat to my car and my access?" She said, "You have full access as of right now. If anyone tries to tow your car or block your entry, call me immediately and call the police. I am also going to have our attorney send a cease and desist letter to Miss Harper." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Do you want to file a police report?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I will provide a statement as well." I left the management office and drove straight to the Seattle Police Department North Precinct. I brought my laptop and the printed timeline. I explained the situation to the front desk officer. She directed me to a detective who handled property crimes. His name was Detective Ramirez. I sat down and walked him through everything. I played the videos. I showed him the timeline. I showed him the emails from Colleen. I told him about the vendor complaints. He took notes. He said, "This is pretty clear cut. She is on camera. Do you know if she has taken items from other residents?" I said, "Yes. At least 3 others that I know of." He said, "I would like to talk to them." I gave him their contact information. Detective Ramirez said he would open a case and follow up with Colleen. He said it might take a few days. He said I should document any further contact from her. He gave me a case number. I thanked him and left. I felt lighter. The machinery was moving. Colleen could not manipulate the police the way she manipulated the HOA. She could not delete police reports. She could not edit case files. She was in real trouble now. But she was not done yet. The next morning, I got a text from Marcus. He said Colleen had shown up at his door the night before and tried to pressure him into changing his story. She told him that I was lying, that the videos were edited, and that if he cooperated with me, he would be violating HOA rules and could face fines. Marcus said he told her to leave. He said she stood on his porch for 5 minutes, jingling those keys until he threatened to call the police. Then she left. He said he was going to file a harassment complaint with the management company. That was the side complication. A witness was changing their story after Karen cornered them in private. Except Marcus did not change his story. He doubled down. But another neighbor did. Her name was Paula. She lived 2 units away from me. She had originally told me she had footage of Colleen near her mailbox, but the next day she sent me a message saying she had reviewed the footage again and it was not clear. She said she did not want to get involved. I asked her what changed. She did not respond. I figured Colleen had gotten to her too. It did not matter. I had enough. The management company was moving. The police were moving. The vendors were willing to talk. Colleen was losing control. But she still had one card to play. She tried to force an emergency board meeting. She sent an email to the full board claiming that I had been harassing her, that I had fabricated evidence, and that I was creating a hostile environment for board members. She requested an emergency session to vote on my immediate removal from the community. That was not a real thing. You cannot vote to remove a homeowner, but she tried anyway. The board president, a guy named Tom, forwarded the email to Linda at the management company. Linda forwarded it to me. She said, "This is not going to happen." I said, "Good." She said, "But you should be prepared for her to show up at your unit or try to escalate in another way." I said, "I will be ready." 2 days later, Colleen made her final move. I was leaving for a medical appointment. I walked out to my car. There was a tow truck parked behind it, blocking me in. The driver was standing next to the truck, arms crossed. I walked up and asked what was going on. He said he had been called to tow my car for a parking violation. I said there was no violation. I was parked in my assigned spot. He said he had authorization from the HOA. I said, from who? He said, Colleen Harper. I said, she does not have that authority. He said, she told me she did. I said, she is lying. He said, I need to see proof. I pulled out my phone and called Linda. I put her on speaker. Linda answered. I explained the situation. She asked to speak to the tow driver. He took the phone. Linda told him that Colleen Harper did not have authorization to order tows, that she was under investigation for misconduct, and that if he towed my car, the management company would file a complaint with his company and pursue damages. The driver handed the phone back to me. He said, I am not towing your car. He got in his truck and left. I got in my car and drove to my appointment. On the way, I called Derek, the tow company manager I had spoken to earlier. I told him what had just happened. He said, that is the 4th time she has tried this. I said, are you willing to document this? He said, yes, I am done. She is costing us business and putting my drivers in bad situations. I said, can you send a statement to the management company and the police? He said, I will have it to you by end of day. That afternoon, Linda called me. She said the board president had reviewed the evidence and was recommending Colleen's immediate suspension from the compliance chair position. She said the board would vote on it at the next meeting. She said in the meantime, Colleen was not allowed to contact residents, access common areas unsupervised, or represent herself as an HOA official. I said, how do you enforce that? She said, we sent her a cease and desist letter. If she violates it, we file for a restraining order. I said, good. Linda also said the police had contacted her. Detective Ramirez had interviewed the other residents with missing packages. All 3 confirmed that Colleen had taken items. One of them had additional doorbell footage showing Colleen opening a package on a porch, looking inside, and then walking away with it. Ramirez was building a case for theft and mail tampering. Federal mail tampering. That was a felony. Linda said Colleen would likely be arrested within the next week. But I still wanted my moment. I wanted to confront her one more time, in public, with witnesses, and make sure everyone knew what she had done. I did not have to wait long. The next community event was a neighborhood cleanup day. It was scheduled for Saturday morning. Volunteers were supposed to meet at the mailbox cluster at 9. I showed up. So did Marcus. So did the 2 other residents with missing packages. So did about a dozen other neighbors. And so did Colleen. She walked up at 9:15, carrying a clipboard and wearing a lanyard with a laminated badge that said compliance chair. She had her key ring on her belt. She looked around and saw me. Her face went hard. She walked over and said, you are not allowed to be here. I said, this is a community event. I am a homeowner. She said, you are under investigation. I said, no, you are under investigation. She said, that is a lie. I said, the police have a case number. The management company has suspended you. The tow company has filed a complaint. You are done. She looked around. People were watching. She raised her voice. She said, this man has been harassing me. He has fabricated evidence. He is trying to destroy my reputation. I stayed calm. I pulled out my phone. I opened the video folder. I held it up so people could see the screen. I said, I have doorbell footage of you stealing my packages. I have footage of you stealing from my neighbors. I have timestamps. I have metadata. The police have copies. The management company has copies. You are on camera. You are caught. Colleen said, your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. A neighbor in the back of the crowd, an older woman named Janet, repeated it back. She said, your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. Then she laughed. She said, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Colleen turned red. She said, I have witnesses. Janet said, so do we. And we have video. Colleen looked around. No one was backing her up. Marcus stepped forward. He said, you came to my house and tried to intimidate me. You told me to lie. I am filing a harassment complaint. Another neighbor said, You told me my package was stolen by the delivery driver. It was you. Another neighbor said, you have been gaslighting this whole community for months. Colleen tried to leave, but a Seattle police cruiser pulled up to the curb. Detective Ramirez got out. He walked over. He said, Colleen Harper? She said yes. He said, I need to speak with you about a theft investigation. She said, I am busy. He said, this is not optional. She said, I want a lawyer. He said, that is your right. He asked her to step over to his vehicle. She walked with him. He opened the back door of the cruiser. He did not put her in handcuffs, but he asked her to sit inside while he took a statement. He laid a folder on the hood of the car. It was a tabbed evidence binder with blank-looking pages, similar to the one Colleen had been carrying around. He started writing. I walked over. Ramirez nodded at me. He said, I have what I need from you for now, but I may have follow-up questions. I said, anytime. He said, we are also looking into the mail tampering angle. If she opened any USPS mail, that is federal. She could be looking at serious charges. I said, she opened at least 3 pieces of mail that I saw on camera. He said, we will need those files. I said, I already sent them. He said, good. He looked at Colleen through the car window. He said, she is going to have a bad month. Colleen sat in the back of the cruiser for 20 minutes while Ramirez took statements from other residents. People lined up. Everyone wanted to tell their story. Colleen could see all of it through the window. When Ramirez was done, he let her out. He handed her a citation. He said, you are being charged with theft in the 3rd degree. You will receive a court date in the mail. If you contact any of the witnesses or victims, you will be charged with intimidation. Do you understand? She nodded. She walked away, shoulders slumped, keys silent. The next week, the HOA held an emergency board meeting. I did not attend, but Linda sent me the minutes afterward. The board voted unanimously to remove Colleen Harper from the compliance chair position. They also voted to refer her conduct to their legal counsel for further action. The board issued a formal apology to me and to the other residents who had been affected. They refunded all compliance fees and fines that had been issued under Colleen's authority in the past 6 months. That included my $500 fine that had never actually been processed, but had been threatened. The board also implemented a new policy requiring dual authorization for any enforcement action, meaning no single board member could issue fines, suspend access, or authorize tows without a second board member signing off. The management company went further. They conducted an access key audit. They discovered that Colleen had been holding on to master keys for the mailbox cluster, the pool gate, the clubhouse, and the storage area. She was supposed to have turned those in when her term as compliance chair ended 2 years ago, but she had kept them and kept using them. The audit showed that she had made copies. The HOA changed all the locks. They sent a bill to Colleen for the cost. She did not pay it. They filed a lien on her townhouse. Colleen also lost her moderator role in the neighborhood chat. The chat was run through a third-party app, and residents voted to remove her as admin. She was still in the chat as a regular member, but she stopped posting. People started sharing their stories publicly in the chat. It turned out Colleen had been stealing for at least a year. Small things, packages, petty cash from the clubhouse, cleaning supplies from the storage closet, even a few items from the community donation bin during a charity drive. The item was never truly missing. It was moved to create panic. She would take something, hide it, then point fingers and create chaos. Then she would either keep the item or return it quietly and take credit for solving the problem. It was a control game. She got off on the power. The insurance company that covered the HOA's liability policy got wind of the situation. They sent a risk assessment team to review the association's management practices. The assessment found multiple gaps in oversight, including the fact that Colleen had been operating without any checks on her authority for years. The insurance company issued a warning that if the HOA did not implement stronger controls and remove Colleen from any leadership role, they would non-renew the policy. That was the payback vector. An insurance risk warning that made the HOA panic. The board moved fast. They not only removed Colleen from the compliance chair, they also moved to remove her from the board entirely. She resigned before they could vote. Colleen stopped coming to community events. She stopped walking around the neighborhood. Her townhouse went up for sale 3 months later. By that time, the criminal case was moving forward. She had been formally charged with theft and mail tampering. The federal mail tampering charge was the big one. The prosecutor was pushing for a plea deal, but Colleen was fighting it. Her attorney tried to argue that the footage was inadmissible, or that it had been edited. The judge was not buying it. The metadata on the video files was clean. The timestamps matched. The geolocation data was accurate. There was no evidence of tampering. The case was solid. In the end, Colleen took a plea deal. She pled guilty to theft in the 3rd degree and 1 count of mail tampering. She was sentenced to community service, probation, and restitution to the victims. She was also banned from holding any position in any homeowners association in Washington state for 10 years. The HOA settled with the affected residents separately, issuing additional refunds and covering legal fees for anyone who wanted to pursue civil action. I did not pursue civil action. I got my refund, I got my access back, and I got my reputation cleared. That was enough. The neighborhood is quieter now. The new compliance chair is a retired teacher named Mr. Alvarez. He is calm, reasonable, and actually follows the rules. There have been no missing packages since Colleen left. The mailbox cluster is just a mailbox cluster again. The pool gate is just a pool gate. The HOA is boring, which is exactly how it should be. Marcus still lives 3 units down. We talk sometimes when we take out the trash. He told me Colleen's townhouse sold fast. She moved out of state. He said he heard she was trying to join another HOA board in Arizona. I said, good luck to them. He laughed. He said, I give it 6 months before she is banned there too. I still have the doorbell footage saved in 3 places. I still have the USB drive. I carry it sometimes, just as a reminder. A reminder that proof matters, that documentation matters, that standing up to bullies matters. Colleen thought she could manipulate the narrative because she controlled the minutes. She thought her version of events was the only version that mattered. But she forgot that other people have cameras now. Other people have receipts. Other people have voices. The last time I saw Colleen was the day she moved out. I was getting into my car. She was loading boxes into a moving truck. Our eyes met for a second. She looked away first. She did not say anything. She did not jingle her keys. She just kept loading boxes. I got in my car and drove away. I had a medical appointment to get to, and I was not going to be late. My schedule was back on track. My access was restored. My name was cleared. And Colleen Harper was gone. Thank you for the support.